Alright, so this is going to be the PVC project. This is not something that you would normally see out in the field where you're going to make a loop, but what you're doing is you're just getting the procedure down of using the new tools I'm going to introduce to you today, as well as getting to use some different ways of joining material. In this case, it's going to be glue because the material is going to be plastic. You will need 15 inches of CPVC, ½ inch, and then you will also get one of these buckets with some of the fittings that are already in there for you. Like that one, there's a T, yep, you'll have one T. You'll have 4 elbows, L's, yep, and then you'll have one threaded to glue ½ inch union. That's what they call it, threaded, okay, National MPT, National Pipe Thread, all right, and that's what you're making with the black iron, but this has already been prefab for you. You also will need some of the glue and cleaner, a set of gloves for when you put the glue and the cleaner on the pipe, and some tools. I got a pair of ways of cutting the pipe, or with this PVC cutter. It's ratcheting. It ratchets closed so that it makes for an easy cut. You can also use a cutting saw. This is for PVC, or a standard hacksaw with about 26, a general purpose blade, about 26 teeth per inch. The CPVC is not the same thing as PVC, chlorinated polyvinyl. This stuff here is what I would use primarily for drain lines coming out of my HVAC equipment. You can see right here we have 3/4 inch PVC. They put in a trap and then it runs to a drain somewhere, and these guys got to install it in their units here. Primarily what they've been using the CPVC for, prior to PEX coming out on the market, this was used for water lines. And this glue is a little different. You can get the standard CPVC glue, which this stuff is orange, or they have other types of glue that is multi-purpose or all-purpose. I could use this for PVC, CPVC, and ABS, which that would be for some sort of electrical work. Pretty much that's all the new stuff here. Any questions about any of this new stuff? There's a project board here that's exploded view and a completed view. All right, so this shows you how it's supposed to look when you get all the pieces cut. And then this is how it looks once you get it all formed together. And then there's a couple here that I could pass around so you can take a look at it. There you go. Take a look at it as it gets passed around. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is you're going to need a marker, and I'm going to take the 10-foot stick of CPVC and mark 15 inches with this. Should be 15, I do believe. We'll go ahead and might even have a little bit left over. So again, I kind of like to mark all the way around the pipe so that if it gets rubbed. Now with this ratcheting PVC cutter, it's got a safety that locks the handle in place, and then when I pull the jaws back, that exposes my cutting blade into the guide jaw. I want to try and I can squeeze the blade while I ratchet it, but you don't want to put anything in here, because if you put your finger or something else that's not plastic in there, you'll either damage the blade or hurt something. So you want to make sure that your fingers are away. And then you just line up the line with the center of the blade, and then you just continue ratcheting it down, and it makes for a nice smooth cut. The benefit of using this tool versus the hacksaw is that the hacksaw, usually you don't have a vise around, so you're putting your hand here, and then you got your hand close by where you're working if you're taking a lot of strokes, and then every time you take a stroke, these little plastic flakes come out, and it makes for a rougher cut. It still makes a cut, but it makes for a rougher cut. Plus, it's a lot more energy to go back and forth 50 times with the hacksaw or the PVC saw rather than just using that ratchet. Now that I've got that piece cut, I'm going to set it up. If you want to learn what the sizes are, it says that you need 6 inches wide from elbow to elbow, so that's right there to there, from end to end, and that should be right in the middle. This line should line right up with the 3-inch mark on your ruler. So I can kind of put it together like this first to see, because there's no there's no measurements for how long you're supposed to cut the pipe. I just gave you an ultimate dimension of 6 inches tall, no taller than 6 inches from top to bottom, and no wider than 6 inches from elbow to elbow. And this piece in here's got to be 3 inches. So I don't have any sizes. You got to kind of figure that out on your own. So this is one way to do it. You can line up the piece so that it is 3 inches wide. Bring it in a little shorter than that on either side, and kind of put it together on the table. And then you put your union up there at the top, 6 inches high from the bottom of this elbow. So now I can go back through, and pretty much whatever size the pipe is, that's how much is going to stick inside my fitting here. So I have 1/2 inch pipe. I'm going to have a 1/2 inch. Actually, I can't cut to here, else it'll be too short. I want to cut it so it sticks in about a 1/2 inch, right about to there. Okay? So if I cut that at a 1/2 inch, and we got these at 6 inches, that should be a 4.5 inch cut on my first one. So this first one here is going to be 4.5. I'm going to mark that at 4.5. And then, go ahead, I can even mark it real quick while I'm at it. All right, 4.5. These side pieces, I believe, are at 1.5. So I'm going to have two 1.5 inch pieces. And then I'm going to have a 1 3/4 inch piece on either side of the T. So those look really close together. When you put them all together and you're mixing them up for cleaning, these tend to get shifted around. So I'm going to try and mark those a certain way when I make the cut. So I got two 1.5 inch pieces, and I'll go ahead and I'll just put 1/2 there. And then two 1 3/4 inch pieces. I'm going to put 3/4 there. And then this piece coming to the top. If this whole thing is 6 inches from top to bottom, and that means this piece here is going to be, I do believe, 2 inches. And then you have just a little bit left over. So you got 4.5 to 1.5 to 1 3/4, and then the last piece, we'll go ahead and cut it 2 inches. It might be a little bit shorter than that, but that's all right. All right, I'm gonna mark that as my top. I'll put a T on that. So now I've got the pipe all set up. I can go ahead and make all my cuts. I want to try and make the cut as straight as possible, because what's going to happen there is I'm going to have a gap when I shove this in flush into the fitting on this side here a little bit. So you can guide the blade and try and keep it the same position all the way down. In other words, if you push it to the left or the right, it's going to cut to the left or the right. If you try and keep it straight and push it straight, it will make for a straighter cut, because it's got maybe a 1/4 inch gap there, and it can slide 1/8 of an inch either way. So that's going to be my top. This is going to be my side. Side. All right, now I'm all set. That's my leftover piece. Might need that if we mess up. And also, if you happen to glue it in the wrong way, I'm going to show you the way you're supposed to do it. But if you happen to mess up and you can't do this piece last, because you can't pry this open to get this in. Or I can't do that piece last. I got to kind of do it half. I'm going to kind of glue up all this stuff one side first, and then I'm going to save this for the last part. And I'll do that and smush it together. Or I could do the bottom as the last part. I don't care if you do the side or the bottom, and I can smush that up. But you can't leave one of these out and do it in the last one. If you do, you might need to cut it, put in a coupling, and redo it a little bit. I'm going to go ahead, we're going to open this stuff up. When you first open up the glue and the cleaner, you might need a pair of channel locks to get it open. Slip groove pliers. Alright, so I can just take it and make sure that it's already kind of cracked open. Now, you will be doing this under the vent hood because of the fumes. There's a lot of fumes that come off with this stuff. In fact, when I open up these cans, you'll start to smell it. If you need to get some ventilation, fresh air, you can step outside. But normally when we do this, there's no mask that we wear. We're not exposed to it for a long enough time. Now, if I was in a closet or an enclosed room doing this in somebody's home, number one, I'd have some drop covers down, because if this stuff spills, now their carpet, whatever color it was, has got purple stains on it. Or if the glue spills, that's going to collect dirt, dust, and trap and look like a big old clump of plastic after I leave. So we want to make sure that we protect the customer's area, and that we also protect ourselves with proper ventilation when we have this stuff open. I kind of like the smell though. I got a pretty good story that I'll tell you later that goes along with the smell of this pipe from when I was a kid. But for this part here, you're going to want to wear some sort of gloves, or else your hands are going to be purple for the rest of the day. Now, with the glue, the gloves kind of break a little bit because that's what it's doing. Chemically, it's doing something with the plastic to melt it, to kind of fuse it together. It really doesn't melt it together and fuse it together, but it is an adhesive to the plastic, and it does stick to the glove and cause the glove to split sometimes. So you might need be careful with the gloves. Right now I have enough for every student to have a pair of gloves. So if they rip or break, I don't have, that's it for right now, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead, we're gonna clean it first. So I'm gonna take this primer, and you see all the letters and the writing and the marker that I got on there? That will for a drain line, it's not a big deal. If I'm not under pressure, I don't have to prep and clean it. But if I'm doing something that's under pressure, like a water line, or you will be pressure testing this project, you're gonna wanna clean it to remove any sediment and impurities from the pipe. And generally we do whatever the length of the pipe is, and then 1/8 of an inch. So I'm gonna do 5/8 of an inch cleaning. You notice I'm not letting it drip all down the pipe. I'm not letting it drip on my work here, unless I shake it. Then it's gonna drip. Also, I got something protecting my table. You need to have that as well. Once you get it cleaned out all the way around, I'm gonna let it dry. I'm gonna go ahead. For this one, I can do both sides. And you see what happens to the lettering there? It takes it right off. That's the acetone or the alcohol, or there's some sort of cleaner mixed in there with it. Now, if you leave the cap off this, it continues to evaporate. That's what we're smelling, all the evaporation of the cleaner. Stand up. So right here, if I leave it just like that, come back tomorrow, it's gone. It's all dried out. There's nothing left. It evaporated all out. So when you are done, when I call cleanup, you have to make sure that the cap is on all the way, or else we're not gonna have this for other people's projects. For this one here, I'm gonna do half of it, and I'm gonna let it sit and dry before I grab the other half, or else it's gonna make a mess. In other words, if I do this one here and clean it, and you notice I do it over the bucket, over the can. That way if it does drip, it drips back into the can. Now, if I grab this in right now and started to do the other side, it would make a mess. I don't want to make a mess. So I'm just going to let that side dry right there and continue on doing the other pieces. Lettering's coming off. Anybody know why they color this stuff purple? Because it used to be clear for many days. So the inspector, when the inspector came along, he could see if you use cleaner or not when you cleaned it. There's a guy that comes around after you do all your work for the county or the city, and they inspect your work. So that was one of the ways they could see. So I'm gonna let that dry for a minute. Also, one other thing, when you cut the pipe, same thing as what you're doing with the black iron and the copper. I didn't do it with this one, but you can take a knife, electrical knife, or a regular pocket knife, and you can deburr the inside. Especially if you use the saws, you'll have to deburr the inside. But I can deburr the inside, so I will go back through after these are dry, and I can come back in and deburr the inside of the pipe. Now I'm going to come back. I think these are dry enough to where I can put the cleaner on the other side. Get the other side cleaned up. Anybody smell that? Can you smell that?
Yeah.
It smells so good, Stringo. I like it. It's making me dizzy. those dust masks that you see people wear, that's not a chemical mask. That really wouldn't help you a lot. It would maybe help a little bit, but mostly that's for particulates, like if you're sanding drywall or working chopping wood or something like that, to keep you from inhaling or large amounts of dust, Josh, from an old home like Mount Vernon's, George Washington's home. All right, also need to do the insides of the fittings. So these are pretty clean. They come brand new from the factory, but if you have them sitting in a bucket or in a bin, they tend to collect dirt. So we just run the cleaner in there like that and get them all clean on the inside. Again, not using too much so it runs out the outside of the fitting, but I just need to make sure that that's clean as well. And then we are ready to start gluing. The gluing process is really quick. All right, so now what I'm going to do is, I told you, I'm going to save this one for last, and hopefully if I've measured everything right, it'll come together, and we're going to build this up first. So for this part here, we're going to use the orange CPVC cement. And this is not as strong as the cleaner, but it does have some odor to it. All right, so I could just run this around. I might be pushing for time a little bit. I don't want to get any on the inside of the pipe, but as soon as you do that, it's starting to harden right now. So I can go ahead and just shove it in, and that's it. If you got any excess, you can wipe it with a rag. All right, and then the thing of it is, it's not so bad when I do one, but when I do the other one, we got to make sure that we're lining up the way we want to go, because once this thing glues, if it's facing the other way, you're not going to be able to use it. So I'll go ahead and I'll try and, let me scoop more of this glue off. It's a full can right there. So I'll put a little bit of glue in here, and then I'm going to use the table to make sure we're square. Give it a little twist, insert the male into the female, give it a little twist, and then continue on with your work. Same thing with the T. Can't have the T going any other way but up. I'm going to save that last elbow for last. We're going to do the right side instead of the bottom. Uh-oh, I think that's my 1.5. Woo! So we had a second. It takes about 15 minutes to completely set, and then best to leave it overnight before you pressurize it with water. So for those of you that get it done in time, you might leave it in your locker overnight. All right, we're going to save this one for last, and then I'm going to go ahead and do this one here. Now, when I stick this one in, both these should line up at the end. It should be pretty close. Insert the male and female. Should be pretty close. Shouldn't have one sticking out farther than the other. In fact, I can go ahead and we can do the top two real quick before the bell rings. Now, here's what I'm talking about. If I had done these elbows and try and pry it apart, put that piece in, I can't do it. It's hard to do. And you notice I'm only putting the glue on the male end of the fitting, not the female end. We don't shove the glue inside the fitting. We put the fitting in there, give a little twist, any excess, wipe that clean. Now I'm ready for my last piece. I'm going to go ahead and do one side. Could have cleaned that before I did it with that glue, but I don't think the glue was dry yet. Do my other side, and then we should be ready to connect the piece together. Straight on, it should, look at that there, perfect. So if you do everything right, on your last one to glue, you got to do two at the same time. You won't be able to twist it, but it'll wiggle a little bit when you put it in. Squeeze it down. Again, any excess you can wipe clean. Go back, get any of the sloppiness off. And that's it. That's your PVC project. Should be 6 inches wide, 6 inches even, by 6 inches up high, by 3 inches wide right there. And then that's not it. You have still got to pressure test it. So you let it sit overnight. And then you need to come to the threads here. We talked about the dope. We talked about the Teflon tape. This is it. This is Teflon tape. I'm going to take a little piece of this and pass it around. All right. Comes usually on a blue roll with a white cover. And what you do is you need 7 wraps around the threads so that we can screw it into our fitting to pressure test it up by the sink. You're going to use water pressure at about 100 psi. So I run it around the edge, and then I bring the Teflon tape up so it's right about just about a thread away from the end, and give it 7 turns around. So that's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and when you're done, just pull it and it comes off, and then just smoothly wrap it around, and we are ready for pressure testing the PVC pipe. And you've showed me the skill now of connecting a joint using cemented joint. All right, so you've got the black iron threaded joint, you've got the brazed joint, dissimilar metals, soft solder, hard solder, and this will be the last piece before we go into it. Any questions about this? Go ahead and close it. All right.